Moving on to our next segment, preventing and understanding occupational diseases is just one of the many ways this IAFF is working for you. There are so many operational and protective equipment considerations, including the garments, the SCBA you wear, and the apparatus for response. But the true lifeline that connects you to command and assistance from your fellow firefighters when working in the harshest and most hostile environments is your radio. To operate safely in these dynamic environments, it is imperative that firefighters have the ability to immediately communicate information accurately. Our next three presenters will focus on emerging technology and innovative solutions in the world of communications. Our first speaker is Chris Sambar, Senior Vice President of AT&T FirstNet. He holds an MBA from the University of Southern California. He is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy and has served multiple deployments through Europe and the Middle East. Following Chris will be Mike Worrell. Mike is the Area Director West and Senior Fire Services Advisor for FirstNet Authority, providing outreach to education to fire departments across the nation. Prior to joining FirstNet, Mike served in the Phoenix Fire Department for 29 years. Mike has worked with the IAFF on communication issues for many years to increase firefighter safety and was a significant contributor to the Voice Radio Communication Guide for the Fire Service, published by the U.S. Fire Administration in 2006. Following Mike will be Chris Lumbar. Battalion Chief Chris Lumbar has been active in the fire service for over 25 years and currently serves with the Seattle Fire Department. He has responded to and supported communications and information management at many significant emergency responses. He has helped with development of many national documents, including the U.S. National Communication Plan and the Voice Radio Communication Guide for the Fire Service, published by the U.S. Fire Administration. He is a member of the FirstNet Public Safety Advisory Committee, Vice Chair of DHS SafeCom Program, and a member of the International Association of Fire Chiefs Communications Subgroup, and a member of the IAFF. As you can tell from their backgrounds, we have some of the best communication experts before you today. So let's get this segment started. Please welcome our first panelist, Chris Sambar.
Say good morning, everybody, but I think it's afternoon now. I want to start by thanking your General President, Harold Schaitberger. I think you all know he's very discerning and careful about who he allows to come and speak with you. And so I consider it an honor to be invited here today. So thank you very much, sir. I do appreciate that. First, I'm going to give you a quick background on what FirstNet is. I think probably most of you that I've met out there have heard of FirstNet, but just to give you a quick background on what it is. On September 11th, the 9/11 Commission shortly afterwards came out with a report, and one of the major glaring issues that they found with the September 11th tragedy was communications. And they said we need to do something better as a nation for our first responders around communications. And I won't give you the long drawn-out history, but in 2012, Congress allocated spectrum and money, wireless spectrum and money. They created an organization called the FirstNet Authority, and they told this federal organization, whom Mike Worrell is going to speak to you about next, they said, we need you to create a network for first responders. We're all familiar with the 4 wireless networks in America, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint. They said we need another network, and it needs to be just for first responders. And it needs to operate in a really special manner for those folks, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. In 2016, they put out a request for a proposal from multiple companies. There were only 3 companies that responded to build this network. 2 of them you've probably never heard of, and one of them, the only major wireless carrier that responded, was AT&T, the company that I work for. And we said, you know, there's 2 reasons we really want to do this. The first reason is we've been in business for 140 years, and for 140 years, we've been big supporters of public safety, and we call some of the largest public safety agencies in America our customers: Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, police and fire throughout the country. So we want to do this for America. And second reason is, many of you may not know this, AT&T is actually the largest employer of full-time union workforce in America. So we are a very proud supporter of unions. We have a very strong and cooperative relationship with our labor unions, Communications Workers of America and IBEW being the two primary ones. And we said this is an opportunity for us to deepen our ties with the labor unions in America. So we endeavored down this road, and what was our goal with FirstNet? And what was the federal government's goal and the state government's goal with FirstNet? Why were we creating this network? I talked about the communication challenges on September 11th, but the reality is they persist. In every major disaster that you can think of, whether it's man-made or natural, there's always communication problems with people having difficulty talking to each other. We have some terrific communication tools out there, but we want to make them better. There was a member of the fire community last year. He said something to me, and I asked him to repeat it because I wanted to write it down. He said, if you look at every major after-action report that's come out since communications have existed, communications has always been one of the top issues. We can't have our first responders, whether they're on duty, off duty, volunteer or career, having trouble with communications because it puts their lives at risk and it puts their mission at risk. So how do we fix it? In cooperation with the FirstNet Authority, we built a network from scratch. We started 2.5 years ago. We rolled it out last year. It's now up and running. There's two features I'm going to tell you about. I could tell you about all the security and cool whiz-bang technology stuff, and I'd put all of you to sleep, so I won't do that. But there's two main features I do want to tell you about. One is called preemption, one's called priority. And it's really simple. When you get on the freeway and you get in the HOV lane, everyone else is away from you and you have that clear path. That's what priority service does on the FirstNet network. It gives you, it's like legal stealing. You get to steal capacity and bandwidth from all of the commercial customers, and first responders get a clear path down the roadway. And the other feature is called preemption. If there's lots and lots of people, say you're at a 4th of July show in downtown DC or in your hometown and you're around thousands of people, that network starts to get congested, that wireless network. The preemption feature will actually kick people off of the network, kick the commercial users off, and it will give you access to the network when you need it. We've had this out for almost 1.5 years now. We're getting terrific reviews across the country. And while other carriers may be promising the same thing, we're not seeing the same results on their network based on what we're being told. So who's it for? It's simple. It's for first responders. We have thousands of agencies that have signed up across America, and we have individual first responders just like you. I'd venture to say there's a number of you in this room that have FirstNet service. You can get it on your personal device because we know there's times when you may have your personal device at work, or you may be off duty and have to respond to an emergency and need your personal device. So as long as you have the proper credentials that you all have, you'll be able to get your personal device on FirstNet as well. Where are we at today? We have over 750,000 users on the network, approaching 1 million, over 9,000 agencies across America. You can add any device you like, iPhones, iPads, Samsung, LG. You name the device that you want to add, it's certified on the network and you can add it. There's a small subset of devices made over in China that we don't allow due to security vulnerabilities, but other than that, you can add any devices that you like. Land mobile radio. I get asked the question, so I'm going to address it really quickly. Land mobile radio is terrific technology, and my job is not to take radios out of anybody's hand. There's some pretty buffed out dudes out there, and I'm pretty sure I couldn't take the radio out of your hand if I wanted to. But I do believe that in time, you will come to see that there is an alternative to the land mobile radio as your primary device, and you will start using a cell phone. It won't look like this phone here in my pocket because this can't handle heat, it can't handle water, it can't handle when you drop it on the ground, but there are devices that are coming out that can handle those things. And I think there will come a time when your radios will become your backup device. You will probably still have them for many years to come, but I believe your smartphones will become your primary device. That will take many, many years, and of course you will make that decision on their own. That's not my decision to make. I do have a couple of quick pictures. You know, you guys have really cool equipment, so I'm going to show you my cool telecom equipment. So this is called a SAT-COLD. This is a cell-on-light truck. That truck in the foreground there, it's got an antenna that goes up to 60 feet. Some of you may have seen these around the country. We've deployed these over 175 times across America just this year. So when the network goes down, whether a wildfire burns it up, whether a car crashes into a pole, whether a tornado or a hurricane knocks it down, we bring these in and they recover the network. This is one example of a truck. On the next slide, on the left-hand side, that's a drone. It's basically the same thing. It's got the guts of the network underneath it. It goes up to 200 or 500 or 1,000 feet, depending on how big we want the coverage area. It's attached with fiber optic cables and power, and it can stay up for days at a time. And then on the right-hand side of that slide, that's the campfire last year, and this is just one example of the 175 where we've deployed. And if you look in the middle of all of those vehicles, you see the antenna in the middle. In the background, the entire hillside is burned. That's because the burned hillside is where the cell antenna were and the land mobile radio antenna were. So this location down here didn't have any communications. So we brought this truck in, we parked it centrally where they let us park it, and that provided communications, voice and data to that entire area. And we have what's called the Response Operations Group. It's a bunch of former first responders that work within my organization that deploy these services for you at no charge. So where are we going? We're going to build a network fast for you. If you don't have coverage in your area, don't sign up. We're coming. Don't worry. We will cover the area that you're in. We're bringing 5G services next year. We're bringing Z-axis location. I don't know if any of you know what Z-axis is, but your phone right now will tell you where you are at a point on the earth. But it won't tell you if you're on the first floor, the second floor, the 10th, or the 25th floor of the building. We're the only major wireless company in America or the world that I'm aware of that is specifically investing in a technology that will tell your phone or help your phone discern what floor it's on. So that if for some reason you fall through the floor, we will be able to trace your steps and where you went in the building, what floor you were on, when you fell through, and the fact that you're not moving anymore will tell the fire on-scene commander that he needs to come and get you, and he will know exactly where you are in the building. So we're investing in that technology. There's a lot of neat things to come. We're really excited about the innovation on the network. I can't thank you enough again for having me. It's a true honor, and I am humbled to be here. So thank you all very much. I'm going to introduce now Mike Worrell, who is the Senior Advisor from the FirstNet Authority. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for the opportunity of being here. I really appreciate the opportunity of speaking out to the IFF and appreciate the IFF reaching out to us and letting us speak to you about FirstNet and where we're going to into the future. First off, I want to explain to you, I'm with the FirstNet Authority. The FirstNet Authority operates within the Department of Commerce. So we are part of the government. And we're going to go back and take a look at the timeline of how FirstNet got to where it is today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the 9/11 attacks. We go back to 2001. We really look at the things that happened there. We identified vulnerabilities in our communication systems for our public safety responders. We identified problems with interoperability, with operability, and in many line of duty death reports cite communications failures. We also didn't have a nationwide system where we can communicate on when we sent responders from across the nation to those two locations. In 2004, the 9/11 Commission report was released, and many of the things that we experienced on 9/11 were validated in that report. It identified those communications failures. As part of that, it was recommended that there be dedicated spectrum allocated to public safety for some type of nationwide network. In addition to this, as public safety leaders across the nation responded by advocating for the building of a nationwide network. So fast forward to 2012, it took a long time for public safety to put the pressure on, and this included, a lot of hard work by members of the IFF. In 2012, the Middle Class Tax Relief Act was passed. This act included the establishment of the FirstNet Authority, and the FirstNet Authority is tasked with building out the nationwide broadband network. Along with this, there were $7 billion that were allocated in funds, and this was a one-time draw, and this wasn't taxpayer money. This money was derived from spectrum auctions that would happen. There was also a board established. It was recognized that this was going to have to have more of a corporate structure to be able to move and keep pace with technology companies that we were going to be interacting with. So there was a board to oversee the actions of FirstNet. The board is a 15-member board. It consists of members of public safety, members of our federal partners, and also telecommunications experts and also finance experts. Along with that is the Public Safety Advisory Committee. The Public Safety Advisory Committee is 43 members that represent different associations across public safety. And for the fire services of really significance is the IAFF, the IFC, Metro Chiefs, and the National Volunteer Fire Council. Lastly, this is really important, is that spectrum that was asked for and recommended in the 9/11 Commission report, that was allocated, 20 megahertz of spectrum. And just make note of that, so we'll come back to that in a few minutes. 2012 to 2016, we did outreach and consultation. This had to be the network that public safety needed. And so we had to go meet with each state, territory, District of Columbia to identify the specific needs within those states, territories, and the district. We worked with the points of contacts within those states to help validate the numbers of users, identify where coverage areas needed to be, identify where the calls were happening. And then moving to 2016 and 2017, we released an RFP. And like Chris Sambar said, they were awarded that RFP, they awarded the contract, so the government, the federal government, has a contract with AT&T to operate, maintain, and deploy this network for the next 20 plus years. We delivered, AT&T helped us deliver 56 state and territory plans. These plans were reviewed by the governors of each state, and all 56 governors opted in. That's a pretty amazing story to get 56 governors to agree to one thing. In 2016, 2017, and we'll go to 2018, we'll discuss that one in a future slide here. So like I said, $7 billion isn't much money when you're actually looking at deploying a network. We had to create an innovative way to do that. So like I said, AT&T, FirstNet Authority tasked AT&T with building this network. They were required to build a nationwide core to support public safety traffic and also a radio access network to build and construct a separate network from their existing commercial network. They had to build and establish the support mechanisms within their organization to support a public safety network, and they've done that. The FirstNet Authority is responsible for partner oversight and support, so we watch the contract. There are contract metrics and deliverables that AT&T must deliver. We watch those, AT&T delivers on those, and then they get incremental payments of that $6.5 to $7 billion over time, over the next 5 years. The FirstNet Authority has public safety advocacy within it, and we look out and we listen to the needs of public safety. We bring those to the attention of AT&T, and we communicate those so that this network truly meets the needs of public safety. We provide technical expertise. We have a lab in Boulder, Colorado, that they work closely with NIST and also the AT&T labs to identify new capabilities to bring to the network. Lastly is the innovation strategy and investment. Remember the dedicated spectrum? AT&T does not get access to that spectrum for free. Over the next 20 plus years, they have to pay the FirstNet Authority lease payments. And these lease payments over the next 20 plus years will total about $18 billion. The federal government will take those $18 billion, reinvest those back into the network to improve the capabilities of the network so that it truly meets the needs of public safety moving into the future. So how do we do that? How do we advance that experience? Number one is we collaborate with public safety to realize the operational benefit of public safety. A lot of times I've gone in to speak to firefighters and we're going to talk a little bit about broadband, and they go, what does that have to do with us? It doesn't, it's not a nozzle, not a hose, doesn't squirt water. Well, when you start thinking about it in fire service terms, you sit down in front of the truck, in the front right seat, there's a mobile data computer that's attached via broadband connection. If you're using the EPCR, that's attached to the broadband connection, station alerting, whether you're sending telemetry over heart monitors, those kinds of things. And then it really starts to resonate that, yes, broadband does matter. And it matters because of what Chris said, priority, preemption, being able to access and use the network when you need it most. Secondly is engaging with public safety entities, associations, the Public Safety Advisory Committee, industry, and government to understand the trends and drivers on where technologies are going and the needs of public safety moving into the future. Next is developing and promoting a public safety broadband communications roadmap, and that's looking at the strategic view on where we're going into the future and identifying technologies where we might need to invest money. And lastly is investing those $18 billion in the network to truly create a differentiated experience on FirstNet, making it that public safety network, that fifth carrier. We've already started this roadmap process, and this roadmap process started with, years ago when we started reviewing existing public safety focused reports, analyses, and we started looking at how we would develop this strategic investment roadmap. We convened with subject matter experts to identify, where we needed to go, identify the components and the technology pools where we need to invest monies. And next, we identified these high-level domains, what we call a roadmap framework. And this is an ongoing process and will continue the next 20 plus years. Right now, we're soliciting public safety feedback and input. We've already drafted a roadmap document that can be found on the FirstNet.gov site. We're identifying opportunities to invest those monies, and we're continuing development of the FirstNet network to make it truly better for public safety. These are the big technology areas that comprise the network, the technology capabilities to actually make this a public safety network. Number one, I said they had to build us a core. The core is the brains of the network that allows the network to have the capabilities it needs for public safety. The second one is coverage and capacity, whether it's deployable assets like Chris showed you in his slides, or just building the network infrastructure out to have the coverage needed so that it's there when you need it and available. These other buckets of technology, situational awareness, Z-axis, being able to locate a firefighter on the floor, being able to display that in a map that's user-friendly, that creates that actionable information for an incident commander on the street, creating more safety. Mission-critical communications, voice communications, new technologies to enhance the communications that are there today for voice. Secure data exchange, making sure that the data is received as it was sent. And lastly, user experience. We have a really hard problem in the fire service about having to adapt to the devices. Now we're going to look at making those devices match the work environment that we operate in. So we are working to create this reality of being a catalyst for public safety communications. And the way we do that is listening to public safety's needs, developing this strategic roadmap for investment, and then actually putting our dollars into the network to make it better for public safety. And I'll hand the mic over to Chris Lombard, my colleague from Seattle.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. Knowing that I'm one of the last speakers here at in Nashville before you and lunch, I'll try to make my comments very much to the point and very brief. And I thank you so much for your time, and thank you very much for having me back here to speak at the Redmond Symposium. Really appreciate the opportunity. While they were briefing you on some of the FirstNet technologies and some of the options and some of the stuff initially that's happening, I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a picture on some of the other initiatives that we're working on throughout the nation. So many times you hear about communications being, it's in the after actions, it's in the reports as being one of the big problems that's going on. And we're trying to steer that a little bit away from communications to being more of an information management perspective, much bigger, kind of what I didn't know or what I wish I could have known. The reports as they are have traditionally been kind of vague. You can kind of see in the picture here on the slides, here's an example of a guy that's not getting the whole picture here. When you come to the scene, everybody else is wearing the hazmat suits, standing there and smiling. What don't you know that they know? In the world of communications, in public safety communications, there's been a lot of discussion about why can't we talk. We've done through the IAFF a couple papers with FEMA and others on trying to address some of these issues, trying to identify what some of the subject matters are. Interestingly enough, by just a quick show of hands, how many people here in the audience have at least one smart device, pad or phone or tablet? Right, everybody. How many have at least two? Almost the same amount of hands. How many, okay, we're gonna get into the geek range now. How many have 3 or more devices? Okay, still tons of hands here. So it's not so much that we can't communicate, it's how we're communicating. It's who we're communicating to, how the message is being conveyed, and are the feedback and what mechanisms are being relayed. And we're not looking so much these days at analyzing which of those elements are breaking down. We're just kind of lumping it all into one basket. And so we've really tried lately to try to identify different elements and then try to come up with the different tools on how to address those so that we're looking at information management from a more holistic approach to help our members. Unfortunately, So many of these efforts had to wait for a big tragedy to start, the tragedy of September 11th. Mike and I were two of the responders that actually went to New York on there, and were able to experience and see some of the shortfalls that we have. DHS stood up, as we know, as a federal entity, and one of the projects that they started was SAFECOM, with an advisory group to DHS on trying to address some of these issues, to give us a more coordinated approach on the grant funding, on some of the identification of the problem, and trying to come up with best practices and best policies. In trying to identify the problem, one of the things that we did is we were able to put everything into a couple buckets as far as trying to identify how we're going to fix this. The buckets that everything kind of fit into were governance, standard operating procedures, technology, training and exercises, and usage. And in the subsequent years, we've tried to address each one of these independently, again, working back towards that more holistic approach to addressing our communications challenges and problems throughout the nations. We were able to secure some grant funding starting in 2005, $1 billion in grants for the public safety or the PSIC grant program. And now we were able to incorporate it into every Homeland Security grant that comes out there, has communications elements to help us, to help our firefighters better communicate the information going up for the command and control element, and to better hear what they're trying to say as far as situational awareness. Some of the other successes that we've started to have in the years following the tragic events of 9/11, a real push towards improving standards so that we're all talking on the same, at least whether we're bringing different radios from different manufacturers, that they can at least talk to each other. Some of the FirstNet initiatives, stuff that we talked about. But we're also trying to address the people problem, recognizing that communications isn't just a technology thing, that if you're not willing to talk to me, it doesn't matter if our phones or if our radios will, we still have a problem there. So we've tried to identify through training, certification programs and whatnot, communications unit leader, communications technician leader, information technology, trying to, again, look at it from this more holistic approach. A couple other successes are some of the NFPA standards bodies that we've been working on. We have a new standard that's coming out pretty soon, NFPA 1802, which will take our radios and align them with a public safety standard. Up to this point, we've used mil-spec in the military as very ruggedized stuff, but it's not public safety. They're not in the heat, the humidity, and whatnot that we are. So we're very excited as that's about to roll out. NFPA 1221 is the standard that has to do with how 911 calls are received, the information that we gave. We heard from some of our presenters this morning. If I had only known about some of the situational awareness, what people were saying, what people were doing before we even get there. NFPA 1221 is one of the standards that's trying to look at this and try to better capture what the nation is doing as far as the incoming information and how we're dispatched. What do we need from you? You are going to be part of the solution. We're developing this toolbox, but how you use the tools, where you use the tools and whatnot is very important as well. Again, from the picture here, you can see, just because you have the tools, having the right tool for the right job at the right time is what will make your communications more successful. We have many tools in the communications toolbox between the skills, the grants, the equipment, and whatnot. We have opportunities for all of you at the state and the regional levels. We're going to be trying to make that information available to you through the IAFF as to how to get you to engage in planning, in exercises, communications, coordination. We've come a long way in some of the research that started to happen. U.S. and Canadian Department of Homeland Security's, their research and development wings, for example, DARPA, some of the national labs, have really started to do a lot of work on the future firefighter, trying to help you with that information management. Things to include, things that are included in some of that are like heads-up displays, mesh networking as far as getting all of the firefighters inside of a structure to be able to see each other, see through the smoke, being able to find out information about location, routing, how they've walked, what's been searched and whatnot. Being able to take all that telemetry, biotelemetry, and report it back so that people can monitor your health whether you're able to talk or not. We talked about the FirstNet stuff. I won't go into that too much, but this is just another one of the tools in the toolbox. It's a strong baseline for us to be able to communicate a lot of this information back, be able to tie in all kinds of resources to that and get the information where it needs to go. So just in summary, to kind of wrap up, lots of opportunities now. We've got some phenomenal headway that we're starting to make with tools like FirstNet to be able to carry that information back and forth, and looking forward to engaging many of you guys as we start to learn more about what we don't know and learn what we can do if we get the time, resources, and help. Thank you very much. I sure appreciate it.